The darkness of space held many secrets, but Dr. Felvar had never expected to find one like this. His research vessel hung in the void, its sensors fixed on the massive shape that floated before them. The ship was enormous, easily 3 times the size of the largest Valdrine colony transport. Yet, it gave off no heat, no energy signature, nothing to suggest life aboard. "How long has it been here?" asked Scientist Mora, her tentacles twitching with nervous excitement. Felvar studied the readings on his display. The metal composition suggests no more than 150 solar cycles, perhaps less. He looked up at the view screen, where the dark hull of the mystery ship filled their vision. It should not exist. The Valdrine Collective had explored this region of space for thousands of years. They had catalogued every asteroid, every dead world, every piece of ancient debris. This ship was new to their charts. More troubling still, it matched no design in their extensive databases. The 7 species of the Collective had shared their knowledge freely for millennia, yet none had ever built anything like this. "Prepare the boarding shuttle," Felvar ordered. "I want a full team. Archaeologists, engineers, and security." Mora's eye stalks swiveled toward him. "Security? Doctor, the ship is clearly dead. What danger could there be?" Felvar did not answer immediately. Something about the vessel made his skin crawl beneath his protective suit. The ship's hull was too perfect, too intact. Space was full of dangers: micrometeorites, radiation, the slow decay of time itself. Yet this ship showed none of the wear he would expect from even a few dozen solar cycles of drift. The boarding team assembled in the shuttle bay. Felvar counted 15 specialists, the best the Collective had to offer. Their species varied: 3 Valdrine like himself, 4 insectoid Krillix, 2 gaseous Nethrin contained in mobile suits, and 6 others representing the remaining collective races. All of them were scientists, explorers, seekers of knowledge. War was a concept they had read about in ancient histories, nothing more. The shuttle detached and crossed the void between the 2 ships. As they approached, the scale of the derelict became even more apparent. Felvar had been on deep space stations smaller than this vessel. What civilization built warships? For surely that was what this had to be. The angular design, the armored plating, the weapon ports he could now see dotting the hull, all spoke of a purpose far removed from exploration or trade. "There," called out Engineer Vex, pointing with one of his 4 arms. "An airlock, standard configuration, though the symbols are unknown." The shuttle maneuvered close, and magnetic clamps secured it to the hull. Felvar studied the markings near the airlock, letters clearly, in an alphabet he had never seen. Above them, a symbol, a blue circle crossed by white lines, with small white dots surrounding it. Below the symbol, more letters: UNSC, VALKYRIE. UNSC, Felvar said slowly, a designation of some kind, and Valkyrie must be the ship's name. "What language is this?" asked Mora, scanning the letters with her handheld device. "The database shows no match." "Then we have discovered something truly new," Felvar replied. His heart beat faster in his chest. A new species, unknown to the Collective. The implications were staggering. The airlock opened with surprising ease. Emergency protocols, perhaps, designed to allow access even when power was offline. The team floated through, their suit lights cutting through the absolute darkness within. They found themselves in a staging area, walls lined with equipment lockers. Felvar approached one and opened it carefully. Inside hung a suit unlike anything he had seen. It was clearly armor, thick and heavy, colored in shades of green and gray. A helmet with a reflective visor sat above it. The suit was built for a bipedal species, roughly Felvar's height, with 2 arms and 2 legs. The proportions suggested a creature similar to the Valdrine, though the hands had only 5 digits instead of 6. "Look at this," called Vex from across the chamber. He stood before a wall panel, having managed to pry it open. Behind it lay circuits and conduits, all neatly arranged and labeled. The technology is sophisticated. Not precursor level, but advanced. And the construction, everything is designed for rapid repair and replacement. A military design philosophy, observed Mora quietly, built to take damage and continue functioning. They moved deeper into the ship, finding corridors wide enough for 4 people to walk abreast. The walls were bare metal, interrupted every few meters by hatches and control panels. Everything was labeled in that unknown script. Emergency lights flickered to life as they passed, powered by backup systems that had somehow survived over a century of cold space. The team split up, each group assigned to different sections of the ship. Felvar led his group toward what the ship's layout suggested was the command center. They passed through empty rooms and silent corridors, seeing more evidence of the ship's purpose with each step. Weapon racks stood ready, but empty. Storage rooms held supplies for thousands. A medical bay contained equipment designed to treat traumatic injuries in large numbers. "Dr. Felvar," crackled Vex's voice over the communication channel. "You need to see this. We found the main power core. It is intact." Felvar felt a chill run through him. Intact, after all this time? More than intact. I believe we can restart it. The reactor is a fusion design, more efficient than anything the collective uses. Whoever built this ship was not primitive. Felvar considered the implications. Power would give them access to the ship's computer systems, its records, its secrets. But it also carried risks. Can you do it safely? I believe so. The safety systems are extensive, almost paranoid in their redundancy. Proceed, but carefully. Felvar continued toward the command center, his mind racing. A new species, advanced enough to build fusion reactors superior to collective technology. A species that built warships, that armored them, that equipped them with weapons. Where were they now? Why had this ship been abandoned in such perfect condition? The command center doors opened with a hydraulic hiss as power returned to the ship. Emergency lighting bathed the room in a red glow. Felvar stepped inside and stopped, staring at the room before him. Workstations ringed the chamber, each one designed for a specific function. Navigation, weapons control, communications, engineering. At the center stood a raised platform with a single chair, clearly meant for the commander. "Doctor," Mora's voice was tight with tension. "The computer systems are initializing. I am getting text on these displays." Felvar moved to her side. Symbols scrolled across the screens, too fast to read. Then, suddenly, everything stopped. A single line of text appeared, repeated on every display in the room. UNSC Warship Valkyrie. Emergency power restored. Awaiting authorization. The words meant nothing to Felvar, but the format was clear. This ship was waiting for orders, for someone to tell it what to do. He reached out slowly and touched the main console. The screen changed, displaying what could only be a menu of options. "Doctor, the linguistic analysis program has processed enough samples. It is beginning to translate." "What language is it?" Felvar asked. The response came after a moment of processing. The database identifies it as Human Standard English. "Doctor," Mora's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "There is no record of any species called humans in any collective archive." Felvar stared at the screen before him, watching as the ship's computer began translating its interface into Valdrine script. A new species. An unknown species. A species that built warships that made collective vessels look like children's toys. The screen flickered, and a new message appeared. "Warning. Unauthorized access detected. Initiating security protocols." The lights in the command center changed from red to white, blindingly bright after the darkness. Alarms began to sound, a rhythmic pulse that seemed designed to inspire urgency. Felvar stepped back from the console, his heart pounding. "Everyone, back to the shuttle," he ordered. "Now." But even as his team retreated, Felvar could not shake the feeling that they had awakened something that should have remained asleep. The ship was not just a derelict anymore. It was active, aware, and waiting. And somewhere out in the vast darkness of space, the beings who had built it might be waiting too. The alarms stopped as suddenly as they had started. Felvar and his team stood frozen in the corridor, outside the command center, waiting for something terrible to happen. But the ship simply returned to its quiet state. Emergency lights glowing steadily, systems humming with restored power. "The security protocols appear to be automated," Vex reported, studying his handheld scanner. "The ship detected our access attempts and responded according to its programming. But with no crew to verify our identity, the protocols have reset to standby mode." Felvar released a breath he had not realized he was holding. "Can we access the computer system safely?" "I believe so. The ship wants to be used. Its programming is designed to remain functional even without proper authorization. Probably an emergency measure, in case the crew was incapacitated." They returned to the command center, more cautious now. Mora worked at one of the workstations, her tentacles moving rapidly across the controls. The translation software was improving with each passing moment, learning the structure and patterns of this human language. "I have access to basic ship functions," she announced. "The computer is remarkably cooperative. It seems designed to provide information freely, with only certain systems locked behind security protocols." "What can you tell us about the ship?" Felvar asked. Mora's display filled with data. "The vessel is designated a Dreadnought-class warship. Length, 2 kilometers. Mass, 4 million metric tons. Crew complement in standard operations, 3,000 personnel. In combat conditions, life support can sustain 15,000. Felvar felt his blood run cold. 15,000. The number was incomprehensible. The largest collective warship, built centuries ago before the Great Peace, had carried a crew of 200. This single human vessel could transport an entire army. "Armament?" he asked, though he was not sure he wanted to know the answer. Mora hesitated before responding. "Extensive. The translation software is still processing the technical terms, but the quantities are clear. 120 missile tubes, 60 projectile cannons of various sizes, 40-point defense systems, energy weapons of an unknown type, and—" she paused, her tentacles quivering. "Nuclear warheads, hundreds of them." The room fell silent. Nuclear weapons had been banned by the collective 10,000 years ago, considered too terrible for civilized beings to possess. They had been used only once in collective history, in a war so devastating that it had prompted the formation of the collective itself. The idea that any species would arm a single ship with hundreds of such weapons was beyond disturbing. "What kind of enemy would require such firepower?" whispered one of the Krillix engineers. Felvar had no answer. He moved to another console where Vex was pulling up different data. "I am accessing the ship's database," Vex explained. "It contains extensive information about the humans and their civilization." The first images appeared on the screen, and Felvar leaned forward, studying the creatures who had built this ship. Humans were bipedal, as their armor had suggested. They stood upright on 2 legs, had 2 arms, and a single head. Their skin was smooth, colored in various shades of brown and pink. Hair grew from their heads in different colors and lengths. Their eyes were small and forward-facing, positioned like a predator's. "They look almost like the Valdream," Mora observed. "The basic body plan is similar." "Too similar," Felvar muttered. "They breathe oxygen. They are carbon-based. They can survive on any collective world without environmental suits." The implications were troubling. These humans could walk among them, could settle on collective planets, could blend in if they chose to. Vex pulled up more data. Their homeworld is called Earth. It is a water world, with 70% ocean coverage. Gravity is slightly higher than standard collective norm. Atmospheric composition: nitrogen and oxygen, with trace gases. Temperature range. He paused. Doctor, their world has extreme temperature variations, from far below freezing to well above tolerable heat levels. Yet humans thrive in all these environments. Adaptable, Thelvar said. Highly adaptable. He thought of the collective species, each evolved for specific environments. The Valdrine needed moderate temperatures and humidity. The Krillix required dry heat. The Nethrin existed only in carefully controlled atmospheric conditions, but humans, it seemed, could survive anywhere. I am accessing historical records, Mora announced. The translation is rough, but I can understand the basics. Doctor, human civilization is old. They have written history going back 10,000 solar cycles, and all of it, she trailed off, her voice filled with disbelief. All of it what? Thelvar prompted. War. Their entire history is war. They have fought each other constantly, in every era, on every continent of their world. The database lists hundreds of major conflicts, thousands of smaller ones. They have words for different types of warfare that I cannot even translate properly. Thelvar felt sick. The collective had known war once, long ago, but they had learned, had evolved beyond it. These humans had 10,000 years of conflict, and still had not learned peace. Wait, Vex said, his voice tight. I found something else. Humans are not fighting anymore. At least, not each other. According to these records, they unified their world 200 solar cycles ago. They formed a single government called the United Nations Space Command. What changed? Asked Mora. Vex read from the screen. They nearly destroyed themselves. Environmental collapse, resource wars, and finally, a nuclear exchange that killed millions. They stood on the edge of extinction and pulled back. The survivors united, rebuilt, and swore never to war among themselves again. Thelvar felt a small measure of relief, so humans could learn, they could change. But then he remembered the weapons this ship carried, the armor plating, the military design. If they unified, why do they still build warships? The answer came from another console, where one of the other scientists had been searching through the database. They met someone else, the Devourers, the humans called them. The records are fragmented, but from what I can understand, first contact did not go well. Thelvar moved to read over the scientist's shoulder. The human script scrolled past, translated into Valdrine in real time. The story it told was horrifying. Humans had sent out colony ships, establishing settlements on distant worlds. One of these colonies had been attacked without warning by an alien species that consumed everything in its path. The colony was destroyed. 20,000 humans died in a single day. Humanity's response had been swift and terrible. They had built a fleet, hunted down the Devourers, and demanded surrender. When the Devourers attacked again instead, humanity had obliterated them. An entire species wiped from existence in a war that lasted less than a solar cycle. They are survivors, Thelvar said quietly. They evolved on a hostile world, fought each other for thousands of years, nearly destroyed themselves, and then encountered hostile aliens. Everything about them has been shaped by conflict and survival. Look at this, Mora said, pulling up another section of the database. Recreation and entertainment files. I thought it might show us their peaceful side, but she displayed images on the main screen. Games where humans fought each other with simulated weapons. Stories about wars, both historical and fictional. Music with aggressive themes. Competitive sports that looked suspiciously like combat training. Even their leisure time is about conflict, observed Vex. It is woven into every aspect of their culture. Thelvar moved to the captain's chair and sat down slowly. The pieces were coming together, painting a picture he found deeply disturbing. Humans were physically capable, mentally resilient, technologically advanced, and culturally conditioned for warfare. They were everything the collective was not. "Access the ship's operational logs," he ordered. "I want to know what this vessel was doing before it was abandoned." Mora worked in silence for several minutes. "The logs are encrypted, but the basic mission parameters are available. The Valkyrie was part of an exploratory battle group. 43 ships, sent to chart unknown regions of space and establish humanity's presence." 43 ships like this one? Thelvar could not keep the shock from his voice. "Apparently so. And Mora's tentacles were trembling now. This was not their main fleet. This was an exploratory force. The database indicates that humanity has hundreds of warships defending their core territories." The command center fell silent. Every member of the team was processing the same terrible realization. They had stumbled upon a civilization that could destroy the collective with ease. A civilization built for war, prepared for conflict, armed with weapons the collective had abandoned millennia ago. "Why was the ship abandoned?" Thelvar asked. "There must be logs, records, something." Vex pulled up the final entries. "The Valkyrie encountered an unknown hostile force 3 years ago. The engagement was brief but intense. The ship sustained moderate damage, and the captain ordered evacuation. The crew was retrieved by other human vessels, and the Valkyrie was left behind, deemed too damaged to repair in the field." 3 years, Thelvar repeated. "This ship has been drifting for only 3 years, not a century. The dating was wrong." He stood up, pacing the command center. "Which means humanity is close. Their space borders on this region. They could arrive here at any time." As if in response to his words, a new message appeared on every screen in the command center. It was a video file, activated automatically by their access to the ship's systems. A human face filled the displays, weathered and stern, with gray hair and tired eyes. The human spoke, and the translation software rendered the words into Valdreen. "I am Captain Elena Rodriguez of the UNSC Valkyrie. If you are watching this, you have boarded my ship. I do not know who you are or what your intentions might be, but you should know this. The Valkyrie is one ship among thousands. Humanity extends friendship to all peaceful species. We seek cooperation, trade, and mutual understanding. But to those who choose violence, to those who threaten our people or our allies, we offer only this warning. We have survived extinction. We have defeated those who sought to destroy us, and we will never allow our people to be victims again. Choose wisely." The message ended, and the screens went dark. Thelvar stood in the silence, his mind reeling. They had found something far more significant than an abandoned ship. They had found humanity's door, and they would soon have to decide whether to knock. Thelvar spent 3 more days aboard the Valkyrie before he could bring himself to leave. Each hour revealed new horrors, new insights into the species that had built this vessel. His team worked tirelessly, cataloging everything, recording every detail to present to the collective council. The more they learned, the more Thelvar understood that humanity represented the greatest threat the collective had ever faced, or perhaps the greatest opportunity. He was not yet sure which. The discovery that changed everything came on the second day. Mora had been exploring the lower decks when she found a sealed section near the ship's medical bay. The doors had required special authorization to open, but with the ship's systems accessible, she had eventually succeeded. Inside, she found a chamber unlike any other on the vessel. The walls were covered in names, thousands upon thousands of names, etched into metal plates with care and precision. Each name was accompanied by numbers that the translation software identified as dates and service records. At the top of the chamber, large letters proclaimed, "In memory of the fallen, defense of Proxima Colony." Thelvar stood in the memorial chamber, his scanner tallying the names. 47,312. That was how many humans had died in a single battle. He tried to comprehend the number, to imagine that many individuals gone in one engagement. The entire Valdrine species numbered less than 2 million. This single battle had cost humanity more lives than the collective had lost in all conflicts across all species in the last 1,000 years. What kind of battle was this? He wondered aloud. Vex had found the combat logs, locked behind encryption that had taken him hours to crack. Now they stood in the command center, watching footage that the ship's sensors had recorded during the battle. The translation software struggled with the military terminology, but the images needed no translation. The colony world called Proxima appeared on the screen, a green and blue sphere with small settlements visible from orbit. Then the enemy arrived. Ships unlike anything in the collective database, organic in appearance, covered in spines and ridges. They had surrounded the planet, cutting off all escape. The human fleet had been outnumbered 3-1. The enemy had superior numbers, superior firepower, and the advantage of surprise. Any collective force would have retreated, sought to negotiate, tried to find a peaceful solution. The humans charged straight into the enemy formation. What followed was warfare on a scale Felvar had never imagined. The humans fought with precision and fury, their ships coordinating in patterns that seemed almost choreographed. They used their weapons with devastating efficiency, targeting weak points, exploiting every advantage. But the enemy was relentless, and human ships began to fall. "They are not retreating," Mora whispered, her tentacles wrapped tight around her body in distress. She was right. Even as their ships were destroyed, even as the casualty counts climbed higher, the humans did not pull back. They fought for every meter of space, contested every enemy advance. When their ships were crippled, they rammed them into enemy vessels. When their weapons ran dry, they used their ships as shields to protect the colony below. The battle lasted 18 hours. In the end, the human fleet was shattered. Only 7 ships remained operational from the original 23. But the enemy had been driven off, their fleet so badly damaged that they retreated rather than press their advantage. The colony was saved, though at a terrible cost. Felvar saw soldiers with missing limbs, their bodies held together by emergency medical procedures. He saw captains weeping over casualty reports. He saw an admiral, her face covered in burns, giving orders for the evacuation of the wounded. And through it all, he saw determination. These humans had lost nearly 50,000 of their people, but they had achieved their objective. The colony survived. "They do not think like us," Felvar said, his voice barely audible. "Survival of their people is everything. They will sacrifice anything, endure any loss, to protect their own." The team moved on to other discoveries, each one adding to the growing picture of humanity. The ship's armory had been emptied when the crew evacuated, but the inventory logs told the story. Weapons designed to punch through 3 meters of hardened alloy. Explosives capable of destroying entire buildings. Personal armor that could withstand small arms fire. And in a locked vault that Vex had carefully opened, they found something that made Felvar's stomach turn. Chemical weapons, biological agents, weapons designed to kill through poison and disease, stored in secure containers with warnings in multiple languages. The protocols for their use were strict, requiring authorization from the highest levels of human command, but they existed, ready to be deployed if humanity deemed it necessary. "They have prepared for every type of warfare," Vex observed. "Chemical, biological, nuclear, conventional. They have weapons to fight in space, on planets, in atmospheres, and in vacuum. There is no scenario they have not considered." Mora had been exploring the cultural database more deeply, trying to understand the minds behind these weapons. What she found was equally disturbing in a different way. Human art was filled with beauty. Their music could be hauntingly lovely. Their literature explored themes of love, hope, and compassion. They created beauty even as they prepared for war. "They are not monsters," she said, displaying human paintings on the main screen. "They are capable of creation, of art, of deep emotion. But they are also capable of this." She switched to images of human warfare, historical battles from their violent past. Both exist in the same species, the same individuals. They are contradictions. Thelvar studied the images, comparing the gentle artwork to the brutal combat footage. "No," he said slowly. "Not contradictions. Balance. They create beauty because they know how easily it can be destroyed. They value peace because they have experienced war. Everything they are has been shaped by their history." On the third day, Thelvar found the ship's cultural archive and made a discovery that would haunt him for years to come. Buried in the database was an ancient human text, thousands of years old, from a culture long absorbed into the modern human nation. The translation was rough, but the meaning was clear. "The text is called The Art of War," Thelvar read aloud to his assembled team. "It is a guide to military strategy, written on Earth over 4,000 years ago. Listen to this passage. Supreme excellence consists of breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting. If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles." He looked up at his team. "They have been studying warfare for 4,000 years, treating it as an art form, a science, a philosophy. Every generation building on the knowledge of the last. By the time they reached the stars, they had millennia of accumulated strategic wisdom." Another section of the database revealed something even more disturbing. Humans had words for types of warfare that the collective had never conceived. Asymmetric warfare, guerrilla tactics, psychological operations, economic warfare, cyber warfare, information warfare. They had categorized conflict into dozens of distinct types, each with its own strategies and countermeasures. "They have 347 distinct words related to warfare," Mora reported, her voice numb with shock. "We have 12. They have entire academic institutions dedicated to studying military history and strategy. Their children learn about famous battles the way ours learn about art and music." Thelvar sat in the captain's chair, trying to process everything they had learned. Humanity was adaptable, resilient, and technologically sophisticated. They had unified their world after learning the cost of division. They valued peace, but prepared meticulously for war. They protected their own with absolute determination and fought with a ferocity unknown to the collective. And they were out there, somewhere in the darkness of space, expanding their territory, exploring new worlds, seeking their place among the stars. "We need to return to the collective," Thelvar announced. "The council must be informed immediately." As the team prepared to depart, Thelvar took one last tour of the Valkyrie. He walked through the silent corridors, past the empty crew quarters, through the massive hangar bays that had once held fighter craft. He stopped at the memorial chamber, reading the names of the fallen, trying to honor their sacrifice with his attention. At the base of the memorial, he found a plaque with words that captured everything he had learned about humanity. The translation software rendered it into Valdrine. "We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow. We have become vigilant. We stand on guard. To you, from failing hands, we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high." The words were from an ancient human poem about war and remembrance. Thelvar understood their meaning. Each generation of humans carried the memories of those who came before, bore the responsibility to protect what they had sacrificed for. The dead demanded that the living remain vigilant, ready to defend their people against any threat. As his shuttle detached from the Valkyrie and began the journey back to collective space, Thelvar looked back at the massive warship floating in the void. It was just one vessel, abandoned and alone, but it represented something far larger. It was proof that humanity existed, evidence of their capabilities, a warning of what they could do if threatened. The collective would have to decide how to respond. Thelvar had all the data, all the evidence, all the terrible knowledge he had gathered. But he had no answer to the question that burned in his mind. Were humans the salvation the collective needed, or the doom they had always feared? He suspected the answer might be both, and that scared him more than anything else he had discovered aboard the Valkyrie. The Collective Council Chamber was a masterpiece of architecture, built to inspire cooperation and unity. 7 sections, one for each member species, arranged in a perfect circle around a central platform. The ceiling stretched high overhead, transparent to the stars beyond, reminding all who gathered here of their shared home among the cosmos. For 3,000 years, this chamber had been a place of peaceful debate and reasoned decision-making. Today, it felt more like a war room. Thelvar stood on the central platform, his presentation complete, his evidence displayed for all to see. 3-dimensional projections of the Valkyrie hung in the air above him, rotating slowly. Combat footage played on screens around the chamber. The names from the memorials scrolled endlessly on one wall, a reminder of humanity's capacity for sacrifice and loss. The council sat in stunned silence. Thelvar had spoken for 2 hours, presenting everything his team had discovered. The data was overwhelming, undeniable, terrifying. Humanity existed, they were powerful, and they were close. Council Speaker Vorthen, eldest of the Nethren, was the first to break the silence. His gaseous form swirled within its containment suit as he spoke. Dr. Thelvar, your findings are disturbing, but I must ask, are you certain this species poses a threat? They have not contacted us. They have not entered our territory. Perhaps they do not even know we exist. That is precisely what concerns me, Thelvar replied. They do not know we exist yet, but their exploratory fleets are expanding in all directions. Within 10 solar cycles, possibly less, they will reach collective space. We must decide how to respond before that happens. Respond how? Demanded Council Member Rixtal of the Krillix, her mandibles clicking in agitation. You speak as if we have options. If these humans are as powerful as you say, what can we possibly do? The question opened the floodgates. The council erupted into debate, voices overlapping as 7 species tried to process the implications of humanity's existence. Thelvar stepped back, letting them argue, knowing they needed to voice their fears before they could move forward. 3 distinct factions emerged from the chaos. The first was led by Council Member Sevrak of the Valdrine. He stood in his section, his voice cutting through the noise. We must quarantine human space immediately, establish a buffer zone, mark it as forbidden territory, and ensure no collective vessel ever crosses into their domain. We survived the ancient wars by learning to avoid conflict. We can survive this the same way. Hide from them? Rixtal's voice dripped with scorn. For how long? They are explorers, Sevrak. They will find us eventually. All your quarantine would do is delay the inevitable and make us look weak when contact finally occurs. Then what do you suggest? Sevrak challenged. Rixtal stood, her multiple arms gesturing at the projection of the Valkyrie. We must attempt peaceful contact. Dr. Thelvar's research shows that humans value diplomacy. They offer friendship to peaceful species. We approach them openly, honestly, and we offer alliance. Their strength could protect the collective. We could benefit from their technology, their military expertise. Or we could invite our own destruction, muttered someone from the back of the chamber. The third faction was smaller but no less vocal. Council Member Zephim of the Krath stood, his scaled form imposing in the chamber's light. Neither hiding nor hoping is sufficient. We must consider the possibility of preemptive action. Even suggesting such a thing was nearly unthinkable in the collective. Zephim continued, his voice calm and measured. I do not propose this lightly, but consider the facts. Humans are warlike, expansionist, and powerful. They have destroyed at least one species that threatened them. If we wait until they discover us, we lose the advantage of choice. A surgical strike against their key facilities, followed by immediate diplomatic overtures, could force them to negotiate from a position where they respect our strength. You would start a war to avoid a war? Vorthen's voice was filled with disbelief. Have you learned nothing from our history? I learned that sometimes peace must be defended, Zephim replied. The humans understand this. Perhaps it is time we relearned it as well. Thelvar watched the debate spiral into argument, then into recrimination. The collective was tearing itself apart over a species it had not even met. He needed to redirect them, to focus on facts rather than fear. Council, he called out, his voice cutting through the noise. There is something else you should know. Something I found in the Human Cultural Database. The chamber quieted. Thelvar activated a new display, showing ancient collective texts that few had read in centuries. While researching human history, I was reminded of our own legends, specifically, the prophecy of the inheritors. Vorthen leaned forward in his containment suit. The old myths? Dr. Thelvar, surely you do not believe. Listen, Thelvar interrupted, displaying the ancient text, written 5,000 years ago by the First Council. There will come a species from beyond our knowledge, born of strife and tempered in fire. They will walk on 2 legs and reach with 2 arms. They will make weapons of their mathematics, poetry of their wars, and monuments of their fallen. They are the inheritors, and they will either unite the stars or scatter them into darkness. The chamber was absolutely silent now. Every council member was reading the prophecy, comparing it to the data about humanity. It matches, whispered Rixtal. Every detail matches. Prophecies are metaphors, Sevrak protested. They are warnings about patterns, not predictions of specific events. Are they? Thelvar challenged. Or did the ancients know something we have forgotten? They lived closer to the old wars, understood the patterns of history. Perhaps they saw what was coming and tried to warn us. If they are the inheritors, Vorthen said slowly, then the prophecy says we must choose. Unite with them or be destroyed by them. There is no third option. The debate resumed, but it had shifted. The council was no longer arguing about whether humanity was a threat, but about how to respond to that threat. Isolationists wanted to build defenses and hope humanity never found them. Diplomats wanted to make contact immediately, to establish friendship before fear could poison the relationship. The militant faction wanted to demonstrate strength, to ensure humanity would respect the collective as equals rather than potential victims. Hours passed. The sun that illuminated their world set and rose again, visible through the transparent ceiling. Still the council debated, unable to reach consensus. Finally, Vorthen called for order. We must vote. But first I would hear from Dr. Thelvar one more time. You have studied these humans more than anyone. You have walked their ship, read their history, seen their memorials to the dead. What do you believe we should do? Thelvar had known this question would come. He had spent every moment of the journey back to collective space trying to answer it. He stepped forward, choosing his words carefully. I believe humanity is dangerous, he said, but not in the way we fear. They are not conquerors seeking to dominate others. They are survivors, shaped by a hostile universe to be vigilant and strong. They have learned that peace is valuable precisely because they know the cost of war. If we approach them with respect, with honesty, with an offer of genuine friendship, I believe they will respond in kind. And if they do not? Asked Zephim. Then we will face what the ancients faced, Felvar replied, and we will learn whether the collective can still defend itself when defense is necessary. But I would rather take that risk than live in fear of a species we have never met. The humans left a message on their ship, an offer of friendship to peaceful species. I believe we should accept that offer. Vorthen called for the vote. The chamber filled with light as each council member cast their decision. Green for diplomatic contact, red for quarantine, yellow for military action. The lights coalesced into a single color, green. The vote was not unanimous, but it was clear. The collective would make contact with humanity. Dr. Felvar, Vorthen announced formally, you will lead the diplomatic mission. You have earned the right through your research and your wisdom. Choose your team carefully. The future of the collective may depend on your success. Felvar felt the weight of the responsibility settle on his shoulders. He had advocated for this path, convinced the council to take this risk. Now he would have to face the consequences of that choice. I will need a fast ship, he said, and authorization to speak for the collective. If I am to meet humanity, I must be able to make binding agreements. You will have everything you need, Vorthen promised. When will you depart? Felvar looked up at the projection of the Valkyrie, still rotating slowly in the center of the chamber. Immediately, the humans left their ship behind, expecting it to drift forever. We should return it to them. It would be a gesture of good faith, proof that we respect their property and honor their dead. The council agreed. Within days, Felvar had assembled his team and prepared his ship. The Valkyrie would be towed behind them, a gift and a symbol. As they prepared to depart, Mora approached Felvar in the hangar. Are you afraid? She asked quietly. Felvar considered the question. Terrified, he admitted, but also hopeful. We are about to meet a species that has survived everything the universe could throw at them. If we can make them our friends, the collective will be stronger than it has ever been. He trailed off, unwilling to voice the alternative. Then we will face it together, Mora finished, as we always have. The ships launched, following the trajectory the Valkyrie had taken years before. They were heading into unknown space, toward a species that could be their salvation or their doom. Felvar watched the stars pass by, wondering what he would find when they finally encountered humanity. He did not have to wonder for long. The border of human space was marked not by beacons or warnings, but by silence. For 3 days, Felvar's diplomatic vessel had traveled through increasingly patrolled territory. They had detected scanner sweeps, subtle energy signatures that suggested they were being watched. But no ships had approached, no communications had been sent. The humans were waiting to see what the collective would do. On the 4th day, that changed. Contact, announced pilot Vex from his station. Multiple vessels, emerging from faster-than-light transit. They are surrounding us. Felvar moved to the view screen. 8 human ships materialized in a perfect sphere around the collective vessel. They were smaller than the Valkyrie, sleeker, built for speed and maneuverability. But each one bristled with weapons, and their positioning was tactically perfect. The humans had anticipated every possible escape route, and blocked them all. They are hailing us, Mora reported, her tentacles trembling slightly. Audio only. Open the channel, Felvar ordered, trying to keep his voice steady. The voice that came through was male, speaking in that human language they had learned to translate. Unknown vessel, you have entered United Nations Space Command territory without authorization. Identify yourself immediately and state your intentions. Felvar activated the translation system, allowing him to respond in human language. This is Dr. Felvar of the Valdrine Collective. We come in peace. We have found something that belongs to you, and we wish to return it. There was a pause. Then, explain. We discovered a vessel designated UNSC Valkyrie, adrift in unclaimed space. We have brought it here to return to you. We seek peaceful contact with humanity. Another pause, longer this time. Thelvar imagined the humans conferring, analyzing his words for deception, weighing their options. Finally, the voice returned, slightly less hostile. Stand by for escort. Do not deviate from the course we provide. Any aggressive action will be met with immediate response. Understood, Thelvar replied. We will comply. The human ships maintained their formation as they guided the collective vessel deeper into human territory. Thelvar watched their sensors, noting the increasing number of installations, stations, and defensive platforms. Human space was well defended, layered with overlapping fields of fire and sensor coverage. Any attacking force would face a coordinated response from multiple directions. After 6 hours of travel, a massive structure appeared on their sensors. Thelvar felt his breath catch as it came into view. It was a station, but calling it that seemed inadequate. The structure was larger than some moons, a ring of metal and composite materials that surrounded a blue-green planet. Docking bays dotted its surface. Weapon emplacements were visible even at this distance. Ships of various sizes moved in carefully controlled patterns around it. That is Earth, Mora whispered. It has to be. The planet matches the specifications from the Valkyrie's database. The human voice returned. UNSC Unity Station acknowledges your arrival. You are cleared for docking at Bay 7 Alpha. A delegation will meet you there. The collective ship maneuvered carefully into the designated bay, with the Valkyrie being towed to a separate berth by human utility vessels. As the airlock sealed and atmosphere filled the docking tube, Thelvar gathered his team. Remember, he said quietly, we represent not just the Valdrine, but all 7 species of the collective. Every word, every gesture will be analyzed and judged. Humanity is watching to see what kind of neighbors we will be. The airlock opened, and Thelvar stepped through into human space. The docking bay was enormous, easily large enough to hold a dozen ships the size of his own. Human personnel moved about with efficient purpose, managing cargo and maintaining equipment. They wore uniforms of dark blue with various insignias that Thelvar assumed indicated rank and specialization. And there, waiting at the base of the boarding ramp, stood a delegation of humans. The leader was immediately identifiable. She was shorter than Thelvar, but she carried herself with unmistakable authority. Her hair was dark, with streaks of gray pulled back in a severe style. Her uniform was more elaborate than the others, decorated with symbols of rank and service. Her eyes were dark brown, and they studied Thelvar with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. Thelvar, she said, her voice matching the one from the Valkyrie's video message. I am Admiral Elena Rodriguez. Welcome to Earth. Thelvar felt a chill run through him. This was the captain of the Valkyrie, the one who had left the warning message. She was alive, here, and clearly held a position of significant authority. Admiral Rodriguez, he replied, bowing in the Valdrine gesture of respect. Thank you for receiving us. I apologize for entering your territory unannounced, but we felt the importance of returning your vessel outweighed the breach of protocol. Rodriguez's expression softened slightly. You brought back the Valkyrie. We did. We found her adrift and studied her systems to understand who had built her. When we learned about humanity, we knew we had to make contact. The ship is yours, as are the personal effects of your crew that we found aboard. For the first time, Rodriguez's professional demeanor cracked. She glanced toward the berth where the Valkyrie was being secured, and Thelvar saw genuine emotion cross her face. She was a good ship. We left her behind because we had no choice, but it hurt. The fact that you brought her home, she paused, collecting herself. That speaks well of your intentions. We also found the memorial, Thelvar added quietly. The names of those who fell at Proxima. We treated them with respect. Rodriguez nodded slowly. Then you understand what that battle cost us, and you still chose to come here, knowing what we are capable of. We came because of what you are capable of, Thelvar replied. The collective has lived in peace for thousands of years. But peace maintained through ignorance of danger is not true peace. It is merely a delay before reality intrudes. You are our reality, Admiral. The question is whether that reality will be one of cooperation or conflict. Rodriguez smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her stern features. I like you, Dr. Thelvar. You are honest, which is more than I can say for most diplomats I have met. Come, we have much to discuss, and it should be done somewhere more comfortable than a docking bay. She led them through the station, and Thelvar tried not to stare at everything around him. Humans were everywhere, working, talking, living their lives. They came in an astonishing variety of appearances. Skin tones ranged from pale pink to deep brown. Hair was every color imaginable, natural and artificial. Body types varied widely. Some were tall and thin, others short and broad. Every possible combination of features. You are diverse, Mora observed. All one species, but so many variations. Humans evolved in different regions of Earth, Rodriguez explained. We adapted to various climates and environments. When we unified, we brought all those variations together. Now, diversity is one of our strengths. They entered a conference room with a large window overlooking Earth. The planet hung in space below them, impossibly beautiful. White clouds swirled over blue oceans. Green and brown continents were visible between them. Thelvar could see city lights on the dark side of the planet, evidence of a thriving civilization. Please, sit. Rodriguez gestured to chairs that had clearly been modified to accommodate non-human physiology. I have many questions, but first, tell me about the collective. We have explored this region of space for decades and never encountered anyone. Now you appear, returning one of our ships. I need to understand who you are and what you want. Thelvar spent the next hour explaining the collective. He described the 7 species, their peaceful coexistence, their shared governance. He explained their history, including the ancient wars that had led to their unification. He was honest about their strengths and their weaknesses, their technological achievements and their military limitations. Rodriguez listened intently, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When Thelvar finished, she leaned back in her chair, considering what she had heard. You are peaceful, she said finally. Genuinely so, not just as a diplomatic posture. That is admirable. But it also makes you vulnerable. Space is not a safe place, Dr. Thelvar. We learned that the hard way. I know, Thelvar replied. We studied the Valkyries' records. We learned about the Devourers. Rodriguez's expression hardened. They were a lesson. We reached out in friendship, offered to share technology and resources. They responded by attacking our colonies, killing our people, taking what they wanted by force. We gave them 3 chances to surrender, 3 opportunities to choose peace. They chose war instead. And you destroyed them, Thelvar said quietly. We did what was necessary to protect our people, Rodriguez replied, her voice cold. We did not enjoy it. We took no pleasure in it. But we will not allow our species to be victims ever again. If that makes us dangerous in your eyes, so be it. Better to be feared than extinct. The room fell silent. Then Thelvar asked the question that had been burning in his mind since they arrived. Why did you let us approach? You detected us days ago, studied us, watched us. You could have turned us away or destroyed us. Why allow us to come here? Rodriguez smiled again, this time with a hint of sadness. Because you returned our ship and honored our dead. Because you came here unarmed, broadcasting your peaceful intentions. Because everything about your approach suggested you wanted friendship, not conflict. And because, she paused, choosing her words carefully. We need friends, Dr. Thelvar. Humanity is strong, yes, but we are not invincible. We are alone in this region of space, surrounded by unknowns. If the collective is truly peaceful, if you share our desire for mutual cooperation, then we would be fools to reject that. Then you accept our offer of alliance? Thelvar felt hope surge in his chest. I accept your offer of talks, Rodriguez corrected. We have much to negotiate. Trade agreements, territorial boundaries, mutual defense pacts, cultural exchanges. It will take time, and it will require compromise from both sides. But yes, Dr. Thelvar, I believe we can build something good here. An alliance between the collective and humanity. Cooperation between our peoples. There is one thing the Council asked me to confirm, Thelvar said hesitantly. In the event of conflict with a hostile force, would humanity be willing to assist in the defense of collective territory? Rodriguez's answer was immediate. If you are our allies, then your enemies are our enemies. We protect our own, Dr. Thelvar. If the collective joins with humanity, you become our own. No one will threaten you without facing our response. The certainty in her voice, the absolute conviction, was both reassuring and terrifying. Thelvar realized that this was what humanity offered: strength, security, and the promise that they would never abandon their allies. But also the burden of association with a species that other civilizations might fear or hate. I have a question for you, Rodriguez said. You studied the Valkyrie extensively. You learned about our history, our capabilities, our weapons. Some of your council must have been afraid, must have argued against making contact. Yet here you are. Why did you come? Thelvar thought about his answer carefully. Because fear alone is not a reason to avoid the truth. Yes, humanity frightens us. Your capacity for war, your willingness to use violence when necessary, your history of conflict, all of it is alien to modern collective thinking. But I also saw your memorials to the fallen, read your poetry about the cost of war, studied your philosophy of defending the defenseless. You are not monsters. You are survivors who learn to value peace precisely because you know the price of its absence. Rodriguez nodded slowly. That is perhaps the most accurate assessment of humanity I have ever heard. We are not saints, Dr. Thelvar. We have done terrible things, made mistakes we can never undo. But we learn from our errors, we adapt, we survive, and now, perhaps, we can thrive. Together. She stood, extending her hand in the human gesture of greeting and agreement. Thelvar studied it for a moment, then reached out with his own six-fingered hand. They clasped, the first physical contact between their species. To the future, Rodriguez said. To cooperation, Thelvar replied. As he looked out the window at Earth, seeing the human homeworld in all its beauty, Thelvar felt the weight of history settling around him. This was the moment everything changed, when two civilizations chose cooperation over conflict, friendship over fear. The collective had found what they sought, powerful allies who valued peace, but possessed the strength to defend it. And humanity had found what they needed, friends among the stars, proof that they were not alone, confirmation that peaceful species existed and cooperation was possible. The journey ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges, misunderstandings, difficulties in bridging the gap between cultures so different. But, as Thelvar stood there, hand clasped with Admiral Rodriguez, he felt certain they had made the right choice. The stars above them held infinite possibilities, and now, together, they would explore them all.